we'll read it together, and we'll post it into the group so the group can all read it too.
Okay, so I had asked Sidrah what she thought about the group. Should the group go away? Has it caused any grief? Any suggestions on what they could do better? I met up with her at lunch today, and this is what she said, and I was just typing it up as she talked. But this is what she said. She said, I won't say that the group hasn't caused me grief, because it has. I have obsessed over it for a good 6 months when it was first created, only because there was so much disinformation and people were talking about my family. But I've finally given up on trying to convince them to go away or tell them what I know. I am not against it, because I get that the people on the group have grown attached over this case throughout the years, and to some it's their personal experiences that have been similar, and they weren't able to do anything for themselves or that person, and that's what has brought them to the group. Brought them there to get some sort of closure for themselves. So this may be therapeutic to them. So who am I to tell those people to go away? But I'll tell you what I am against. There's two sides to this tragedy, facts and personal evidences. I don't think personal evidences have anything to do with the group, like talking about the families and even talking about David and Komel's journals. That's something for the family to know. Y'all need to focus on the crime scene and just focus on the facts from the day this occurred. Nothing more than that should be discussed, because it's not anyone's business. When the police investigated, they didn't care where my dad worked decades ago or if Dan Jr. was gay. They looked at facts from that day, and that's what y'all need to do. Just sitting there having conversations isn't going to get you anywhere. Schedule a meeting with investigators, sit down with them, and get y'all's list of questions about the facts and get those answers from them. If they are not willing to sit down with you, I can try to see if they would be willing to meet up with y'all or would be willing to answer some questions over a call. I'm sure that I can convince Gummer to do that. But yeah, I think that's all I have for y'all. Good luck, and I hope you guys can get the answers y'all are looking for. That was basically what she said today over lunch for you guys.
Do you think she can really make that happen? Because I've been trying to, because, Gummert.
She actually can make that happen, because Gummert, this was a while back, he had told her if that was something she wanted to do. He brought it up if the police investigators needed to sit down with the group, because at that point Sidrah was very distressed. Obviously, it was so fresh, and any little post would trigger her. And I mean, we had told her to stay away from it, but curiosity and all that. But yeah, that was one of the things that was brought up by them, that if that was something the family wanted, they would be willing to do that. So I'm sure, now time has passed, and that Sidrah could ask Gummer if that's something they would be able to do. I don't see why not.
Okay, great. I would love that if we could just get that.
I mean, if they can't meet with you guys, I'm sure a Skype call or something, it's not going to hurt them.
Yeah, sure. Even if it's just, hey, you know what? We have this whole list of questions, and let's just, we're gonna ask you these questions. I mean, yeah, basically, anything like that will help people get closure on some of these questions, and then we can, get rid of some of the speculation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of disinformation can be eliminated from there too.
Okay. Well, that's great. I really appreciate that. Thank you for doing that. I'm sorry that the first question, I believe, is about those journals. So kind of like, she's like, yeah, well, I mean, and that's the most.
Yeah, I mean, I see her point of view. The weird thing about me is I get to see both sides. I agree with you guys at certain aspects, and I agree with Sidrah, As far as journals go, I think that should be released, but that's just me, The reason why I say that is the journals have a lot of information, David's were a little weird, he wasn't the easiest person to read, but as far as Komel's go, that's all she spoke about. So I think, like, maybe in time, Sidrah would be willing to, release some of the journals, but it really shows you what Komel was going through. And I don't think she even understood what she was going through. So, it started in July when Nyla got sick. And, she started writing just, I guess, her thoughts and stuff. And she talks about her dad and how frustrated she was with him and just, back and forth with the family. She was just trying to understand her feelings, and I think she was just very confused because she wanted to be there for her family, but I don't know why she didn't say that on her journals, but David didn't want that. He didn't want her coming down here, and that was the plan. Even after she disagreed with Mr. Alam about, doing chemotherapy and stuff, she was supposed to come down here for Nyla's surgery. Mr. Alam was going to buy her a ticket, and, even though they didn't agree on things, they were still, she was still there for them. And then one of the journals that stuck out to me was overnight she sat down with David and he convinced her that she shouldn't come here. That's not her family anymore. Ronnie and David are her priority, and let them figure it out. And it's just a pattern. Like, it's very interesting, reading them and seeing how it shifts and how her, even her own emotions change. She starts doubting herself. She starts off strong, and you can see a pattern. So, I don't know exactly what else you wanted me to cover on her journals.
Well, I think there's a lot. I mean, anything that would help us understand what they read in those journals that made them think that David Crowley was guilty would definitely be good. Now, I mean, just to before we get there, I just want to, people should really recognize that's a big deal. If Komel's mom, is going through all of this pain, all of this suffering, why wouldn't David want Komel to go see her mom? That was about
control. It was more about control for him. I think ever since that time when Komel called her dad and said she was leaving him, I think ever since then it was very, I guess he was scared for that. He didn't really like for Komel to come down here. I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but she's only came down to Texas twice. And it was the 2 times that she got the cars, and one of those was Sidrah's graduation, but any other events, she never came down to Texas. Sidrah was the one that would go in the summer and, spend Christmas with them because she just couldn't come down here. And I think that speaks, like, a lot, too, because it just shows, I mean, what daughter wouldn't want to visit their, her family and her friends in Texas? And I think that speaks a lot from his side on how controlling he was on that aspect. I mean, everybody, every man is different, and to a certain extent, there is some control there, and that's totally fine. Everybody has that in their relationship, but, to a point where, you can't do certain things. He's making her quit her job, and he even writes that in his journal on how he planned it, and he was surprised that he was able to convince her. So, I mean, it just shows manipulation, it just shows, like, how possessive he was over her. And the night of David's reunion, he writes about that, how one of his old buddies from school complimented Komel and called her beautiful and whatever, and he didn't like that, and he just writes a whole article, which was so crazy, and it shows his possessiveness. He says she's mine, and I married her because of her beauty, and it's bizarre, I don't have the journal with me right now, so I could read it, but he was very possessive. Even Ronnie, he writes about her, how he came in between their marriage. And, as a parent, I would never think my daughter would come in between me and my husband, So, it just shows how possessive he was over Komel. So I think that's part of the reason why, she wasn't able to come down here. He was scared. He didn't want her, coming down here and maybe, changing her mind and wanting to stay here in Texas. I don't know what was going through his mind, but I think that had a lot to do with it.
So when you say his journal, because we've heard from different people, multiple sources, blah, 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 about different journals, when you say that he wrote this in his journal, can you clarify which journal you're talking about? Because I've heard about several journals.
So the only journals I've seen is a written journal that he had. He had 3 journals. He only wrote in one. One of them had 1 page on it that apparently he was going to, keep up with, but he never did. But the one I'm speaking of was a DK and a heart on it. That was the front page of it. So I'm guessing that was David and Komel. And
so these are
it was a written journal. Yes, these are written journals.
Okay, yeah, because we've heard about a written journal, a video journal, and then I guess this journal that came out.
I don't think there's any truth on the video journals. That is something I asked Sidrah about it, and she said that it was said that there was an online journal, but she hadn't seen anything from the online journal. It was just a written one that she knew of, and that's something we both have read.
Well, that online journal is in the police reports. So it's a journal called something he was writing in Day 1, and I believe it ended in November of 2014. And I think it only started maybe that previous summer. So it wasn't a very long video journal, but I think, and then you can see in the documentary, they, some of that stuff they call video journal. So it's like, okay, well, what do they really mean? Because those are the videos that David made. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of it also has, misinformation also has a lot to do with the police not doing the best job possible. And I think, honestly, they just hadn't. They told Sidrah this too when she went in March, that they have never dealt with something like this. They really had to figure out how to do it. Like something she had mentioned was that they had to call the Bloomington police and contact them, and a lot of times when they were confused or didn't know what to do, they would contact the higher-ups and ask them for advice. So I think, I feel like they should have just hired a totally different company, or I don't know how it goes, honestly, but they should have had someone higher up who had an experience on this, doing this, and not them. So I see, as a third person, why you guys are frustrated, because of all the misinformation from the police reports. So yeah, I see like that aspect of it.
Do you know if the county sheriff was involved at any point in this? Because it kind of seems like it's just Apple Valley. Well, like there's not too much mention of the county sheriff being involved in this. Maybe that would have been better than hiring.
Yeah, I don't think he was. I don't think he was. Sidrah only spoke to Gummert. That was who was assigned to the Alam side, and I'm not sure who was. There was another person that was assigned to the Crowley side, but it wasn't Gummert. They had 2 separate investigators. At one point, Gummert was out of the office, so his boss was talking to Sidrah, but that is about it. I don't know if there's anyone else.
Okay.
I'm sure there were a lot of people involved, but...
Yeah, seems like it. Yeah, there were a lot involved here. So, okay, so we got that journal. And then with her journal, was there anything in there, too, that would help us understand why the family thinks David Crowley is guilty?
She talks about a lot of, mental abuse and, him wanting to try different types of, what would you call it, like drugs. And, you could tell that she was very, the way she wrote her journals, it basically, she was talking to the journal as to, I feel like that's something she was venting. Like, she was living two different lives. She was agreeing with David just to keep the peace in the house. But the way she truly felt, she was writing down on her journals. And there were a lot of different instances where she also spoke about being scared of him. She wrote one time that she took Ronnie out to, she just left the house because she was so scared of David, because I think that was the time when he tried shrooms, and he was hallucinating, and what else did she say? She said, I wish I had the journals on me, but she basically just talks about how scared she is, and that's not something that Ronnie should be around, and apparently she didn't even know he was going to do, which she was really angry about. They hadn't, that caused a really big rift between their relationship, because that's not something that Komel wanted Ronnie to see,
Was David doing this by himself, or was he with friends?
No, this was by himself. And she wrote that she locked him in the room. I don't know which room she locked him in and how she did that, but she said that she was scared for him and she didn't know how to handle it. And she also wrote that she thought about calling his dad, but and she also wrote that he has alienated everybody, and I don't even know who to reach out to anymore. And, just certain things she says, it just shows how alone she felt. And, it shows that she didn't agree to it, most of the things that were going on. It's just, it's just beyond me that she was such a strong, independent girl, and she didn't think I just don't know why she just didn't leave, if she felt that way, Yeah,
I can relate to that, because I've dealt with a similar thing, and you do kind of wonder that, why don't they just leave? But obviously,
yeah, I've never been in that situation, so I wouldn't, I thought about it, but I've also heard that I guess you just get so into it, and you feel like you can change them, So
yeah.
I guess that's why they stay. But
do you know who? Go ahead.
Oh, no, what was that?
I was just going to say, going back to the drugs, I was just trying to, do you know who he got those from? Is there any mention of, who, because obviously he doesn't just, and really, to be honest, I've never done shrooms or anything, but if I was going to do something like that, I wouldn't want to be by myself, and I definitely would not want to be around my wife. I'd want to be with close friends that I trusted.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was something, that was part of the reason why she was writing in her journal, because she was so that he would do that to her. He would put her in that position where she wasn't even aware of this, So that was part of the reason why she even wrote it in her journal. And he did mention in his journal about asking Danny Mason about shrooms, because apparently he had done them before. And Sidrah had asked Danny Mason about it, and he said that David had asked him about his experience, and Danny told him, I don't think you should go that route. I didn't have a good experience with it. And honestly, he also said that, what else did she say? He said that once you get that high, you always want something, more, like something more that will give you that high. So that's not the route he should go. And Danny told her that David said that he was just tired. He wanted something more. He wanted to feel something more. So, but Sidrah asked him if he was the one who had given him the shrooms, and he said he had no idea about it. So I don't know if it was Chris Peck or who it was who gave him that.
Okay. But she didn't. Do you know if if Komel ever experienced with any of that? Or maybe that's not even relevant. Maybe that's...
She didn't talk about shrooms. She did talk about, smoking weed. She did say that, it helped her anxiety, and that is something she had told Sidrah in the past, too, that she did. It helped her her anxiety levels. But,
right, and she would know because she was in the medical field, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so she didn't do it that often, but, whenever her anxiety level was high, that is something that she would do. And she also suggested that for her mom's pain, like medical marijuana, for instead of the pills that she takes for her pain.
Sure. Yeah, they're giving my stepmom CBD oil, I think, for her bones or something like that, and it's definitely working.
It's very helpful. Yeah, it's actually helping with Mrs. Alam too. It helps her be a little more hungry, since she's on feeding tube or TPN. It helps her be a little more hungry and gain some weight and just not be as nauseous, and so yeah, I believe that helps.
Sure. Going back a little bit to what you said about when Komel wanted to leave David, I'm trying to get a good timeline about when that first happened, when Komel contacted her dad, and I know it's been mentioned, but just thinking here now, I'd like to have that so people can go back and say, okay, at this time.
Don't quote me on this.
Sure.
Don't quote me on this, but I think it was around 2012. It was summer 2012, I believe.
Okay.
Or no, actually, no.
I think it might have been later on.
No, it was actually before that. It was 2011, actually. Okay. Yeah, because when Komel had came down for Sidrah's graduation, high school graduation, that is something, Sidrah didn't even know about this. Mr. Alam did not tell Sidrah about this conversation at all. He kept it to himself and didn't tell his wife or Sidrah that Komel had called him. He didn't, I guess that was their little secret. But Komel had told Sidrah about it, and in 2011 when she came down here, and when we were having lunch, it was brought up, and I was there too. It was a very weird lunch. That is where I saw the disconnect from Komel.
Okay, so all three of you were kind of there?
Yeah, David was there too.
Who was there? Oh, David was there. Okay.
Yeah.
But there was something odd? You just felt something weird, or?
Komel was a very perky person, she has a lot of energy to herself, and, I'm sure you guys can gauge that from the videos on how she is. The way she was talking and the way she would look at David for approval, that's something I've talked about before too, but that is something that struck out to me. I don't think Sidrah had noticed that. I even brought it up to Sidrah, and I said, Komel's pretty different. She's talking a lot more like David, and she's like, well, they're married. You live with somebody, you start talking like that. And I was like, yeah, but, any little thing we talk about, she always looks at David, like, is it okay, I think I had mentioned that I had arranged a little get-together for the girls in her last visit in May. I asked if she could come spend the night, just us girls, have movie night and stuff, and her first instinct was to look at David and see if it was okay with him, which I don't see why it wouldn't be, She was only down here for, not even 3-4 days. So, it's just, different things, anything she said or things that was talked about that she would always look at him for his reaction. Is he okay? You could tell, that was her main thing. Even with sitting with Mr. Alam, Mr. Alam, I don't know if you know, he's very, he's a character. He's a very good person, and he'll speak his mind. So just, having him around David, her anxiety level was so high because she was holding David's hand, and she would just always look at him every time Mr. Alam would talk, to make sure, is he okay? It just didn't make sense. It was just a really awkward place to be in for myself.
Sure. So, can I ask you, what notes did I have here? When did you meet Komel?
I met Komel. I met Sidrah first because we both went to middle school together. My dad, he is Italian, and my mom is Pakistani. So that's how we had something in similar. When she moved down here, she didn't speak English at all, and she had no friends, and, I could relate to that. So we became friends really, really quick, and both of our moms, they got together, and it just, we just had a lot of things similar, and it grew pretty fast, and I met Komel, I would say, when I was 13, 14. So it's been a while. Our families are really close. We both lean on each other, and the Alam side of the family has helped me a lot. We used to live in Dallas, and I actually moved down to Waco with them. That's where I met my husband too. And so the Alam side of the family is a pretty big chunk of my family too. I don't have any family here in Waco. They're all I have. But yeah, Komel was a pretty big part of my life till she was here in Texas, and I saw her every day. So that's why I saw a disconnect when she came back from Minnesota, her last visit, because she wasn't herself.
And her last visit, just to clarify, was what year? Maybe a month?
It was 2014 in May.
Okay. May.
That is when she got her the car.
Okay. Was that when when David and Komel went out to Southern California?
Yes.
Okay.
The reason why, and that's part of the reason why I think David's also controlling. They weren't going to come to Texas. The only reason they came down was because apparently his mom couldn't take care of Ronnie, so they needed someone to take care of her for a little while they were there. So they dropped Ronnie off, and, since Nyla always talks about wanting Ronnie, because she left Ronnie for 2 months back in the day too, so I guess they could trust her. So yeah, they came down for a couple of days, left Ronnie, and then they went to California, and then they came and picked her up, and they got the car and went back to Minnesota.
So they drove. Did they drive from Texas to Minnesota?
Yes.
Back home. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They left the black Corolla Toyota. They left that, and they left in the Acura. Okay,
yeah, that's always been the other thing, and I really thank you for clearing that up about the whole car thing. So if you could just kind of summarize about the whole cars so everybody knows, the situation.
So before they went to Minnesota, Mr. Alam had I think it's when David graduated, Mr. Alam had bought David a car, which was the gray one.
Do you know what year that was?
I know the Corolla S was a 2005 because that was Sidrah's car. They only had one car before, so I would say it would be 2004.
But I mean, what year they had?
Oh, what year they got the car?
Correct. Right.
No, I wouldn't know that.
Okay.
I know Sidrah drove that her freshman year. Because the black Corolla was Sidrah's car, but she gave it to Komel because Komel used to ride the train or the bus, and she felt bad for her because it was so cold in Minnesota, and Mr. Alam had quite a few cars, so she decided to give Komel her own car. So that's how Komel got the black Corolla.
Okay, so they had the black Corolla there, and then
And then
go ahead.
Komel had an accident. She slid. There was like some ice or something. Her car messed up for a good bit, and so Mr. Alam then bought the Acura for her, and he figured, since she had Ronnie, she needed a bigger car, so that's when he bought that for her, which was towards the end in May. And he had actually bought it for quite a while. It's just they could never come down to pick it up.
That was in May of which year?
14.
Okay, 2014. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. Let's see, other thing I had. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Or I had a few other comments here, a few other things here that I was looking at, notes that I wrote down. One of them deals with the Quran, and are there multiple versions of the Quran, or because there was a lot of questions about the pages that were torn out, that were found in the crime scene photos, and if they had meaning, if they had purpose, or if they were just random because of the dog.
One thing that was brought up was the page that was opened. It was a forgiveness prayer, but I mean, even Sidrah said, there was no way that could have been a true picture of the page, and that was something they brought up at the meeting in March when she went down to Minnesota.
In March of 2015. Yeah.
Yes, when she went up there, when they had the whole meeting for the family. But yeah, it was open on the forgiveness prayer, but even Sidrah said that, I mean, it was on the floor and the dog was there, it could have been moved, who knows,
Well, because there are multiple photos that show multiple pages torn out, so it isn't like there was just one page that was torn out, which is what we kind of thought first, that there was one page left on her body or something.
The picture that they showed Sidrah was the one with the book was still intact, I believe. So I think that was the picture. So it wasn't one of the it wasn't the other pages that were torn out that were shown to her. The only one that was shown to her was the one that was on the book that was opened. Okay.
So they only showed her one out of many of. I mean, because in those photos you can tell it's multiple pages, multiple things that are torn out.
Yeah. I believe what she told me was that they had zoomed it in to to the Quran, and that's how she knew what it was.
Okay. Do you know at that time? In March of 2015, did they tell her about what was written on the wall?
Yeah, that was actually the first time they had told both families about what had been on the wall, and that was something Sidrah was, upset or, questioned why it was even hidden in the first place, just didn't make sense why they needed to hide it, and they basically just said, they wanted to show it in person. They wanted to, they were waiting for the meeting. The meeting was supposed to happen when all of this happened within a month, but because of Sidrah's mom, it was hard for her to just, leave her dad with everything. They needed to get everything figured out before she could leave him.
Right.
So
and at that time, both of the families were they communicating with each other, or how did that work out in the first couple months?
Mr. Alam did not speak to any of the family. Sidrah was the sole person dealing with everything. Miss Alam was really sick at the time, and they were in Dallas in another hospital. So Sidrah basically told Mr. Alam, don't worry about anything. I'll take care of it. You worry about Mom. Her husband will take care of the businesses, and she'll handle all of this. So that was what was decided in between all three of those.
Do you think that any of that was encouraged by the Gray State team?
So I believe when the whole documentary thing happened, I think, yes, I do believe, I think they took advantage of Sidrah, her being naive and, wanting to see the good in everyone, which, even from certain things that had happened and while I was there, I kept telling her, just don't trust everybody. And, it stuck out to me, especially with Mason Hendricks. He really didn't want Mr. Alam on the documentary. He kept pushing for just Sidrah. He even told her not to tell Mr. Alam about this documentary. He put her in a position where she was very, she didn't know what to do. But yeah, I definitely think, they kind of liked that they were just dealing with Sidrah and not Mr. Alam. Because in all reality, if Mr. Alam had been dealing with all this would have been a whole nother thing. It wouldn't have transpired to all of this. It wouldn't have gotten to this, especially with the documentary.
Have you seen the documentary?
Yes, I have. I have
seen
the
Do you have any views you want to share?
And, which one? The previous cut or the one that's out there on Netflix?
The previous cut.
Well, what could I say about that? They picked and choose what they wanted to put in there, obviously. They did a lot of editing. They just took out some words that Sidrah had said and Mr. Alam had said. But the things that should have been there weren't on there that they really wanted on there.
When you're comparing the two versions, is the narrative a lot different?
The one thing that stuck out to me on the second one, the official one, they kind of try to make Komel look crazy, in all honesty, by showing her clip. And you know what the crazy part is? Mr. Alam had never seen that footage till the day it got released, so that was the shitty part in all
really?
this. Yeah. We had never seen the footage, and that is why he was so upset that that's his daughter, out there looking crazy, and that's not something they even asked for permission. So Yeah, Eric Nelson definitely had an agenda on what he wanted to show. So, after the rough cut, that was sent to Mr. Alam, Mr. Alam basically said he wasn't going to sign any paperwork till he saw what the direction was going to be. And that's something Nelson had said, that, everybody's story was going to be told, and he didn't have an agenda. Just whatever the interviews were, he was just going to present them how they were. So I'm glad Mr. Alam was pretty smart, and, he wanted to see the rough cut before he signed it. I mean, they were pushing Sidrah to sign her part, but Mr. Alam made sure and was firm that Sidrah didn't do that. Once he got the cut, he was not happy with it. He told him, what's the moral of this movie? What are you trying to get at? What's the point of it if there's no lesson? Because that was what was told to the Alam side. There was going to be a lesson in this. There was going to be something for others so they can be enlightened. PTSD or mental abuse, or for with women, just something. There should have been something. In all honesty, there was nothing about that documentary. I don't see why the Crowley side agreed to it. It shows their son as a crazy lunatic. If the roles were reversed, I would have never wanted that out for my son. But that's just me.
Yeah. But if they could show that it wasn't just him, and it was her too, then it goes back to the pack theory.
That's kind of what I felt. There was no reason for them to put that footage in of Komel.
Agreed.
I feel like the reason why they put that in is to put that pack theory in people's head that maybe she was going crazy. Maybe they decided it together. So I just didn't see the point of that. And another weird footage was Ronnie in the basement. And that made no sense. And the other one, I'm glad you brought that up. The footage of Ronnie talking about the bloody man, they make that seem so bad, and it's actually really funny. It's I don't know if you've seen in the certain movie productions, there's this little red man that shows up before a movie starts.
Can you name one? Because I've been looking for this for months, maybe years now.
I will get back to you on that.
I can't find it.
I will get back. I will get back to you on that. Cool. Yeah, but it's this little red man that they always scared her with. He was a little red man, and that footage was actually recorded by.
Could be a touchstone thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it could be. I think so. I'll look into it. I'll ask Sidrah. She probably knows. And I'll let you know. But yeah, it wasn't anything. I mean, yeah, I know as the third person looking in, it sounds so creepy for a little kid to say that, but she was a very, she had a very broad imagination. She talked like that, and they just turned it around and made it sound so awful for her.
No, she was very bright. That's the way. Yeah. She was bright. She could understand all the. Yes.
She was extremely bright. When I met her, she it didn't seem like I was talking to a 5-year-old. She was very intelligent for her age, and I think that was part of her autism. I know that they're very bright, and so I think that has to do with that. But yeah, just going back to the documentary, certain things they showed had no reason to be on there, and that were shown were completely out of context. So that was what Mr. Alam didn't like.
Yeah.
And the sad part is, the Alams were. This had already been decided, and they were they got their interviews towards the end. It was around July. Sidrah was 9 months pregnant when they shot all that. So apparently they weren't even going to be on the interviews, and not Danny Mason, I always get them confused. Mason Hendricks convinced Nelson to put them on there. So yeah, it was it was a pretty shitty part on their end, and I think Crowleys are to blame too, because, they had no contact with Alam. Sidrah was always the one trying to contact them for anything, and, I get, they feel guilty or, with what happened, but, communication was very, very poor. And it was all through, like, Mason and, Sean, and they shouldn't have been even in the middle of this, in my opinion. It should have been the families talking, and that just wasn't it. Dan Senior never wanted to talk, just it would be through email or a text message, and a day late or a week late conversation. So, yeah, they're a hard family to communicate with, and that's something even his friends say, that's just how they are, that they're a little weird, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, right, which is different than saying that, because they weren't talking to David or because they didn't talk with him every day or whatever,
Yeah, because that's something Mr. Alam brought up. He said, I understand, from our side, we're far away, we're dealing with Nyla's sickness. Well, what was y'all's excuse for not, being in each other's lives, like, he's like, if that was me and my daughter isn't talking to me for this long and she lives literally 10 minutes away from me, I'll pop up at her house, So, I don't know. Their family was a little odd, but, I mean, I'm not going to say too much on that. I don't know them that well, so.
Yeah, sure. Can we go back to a little bit about when we're talking about Rainey in the basement? And can you give us the correct pronunciation of what the daughter's name? Yeah. Can you say the name?
Her name is Rania.
Okay, thank you. Rania. Okay, so can you give us a little, because you've watched that documentary, you've seen both versions of it. The version that certain people have, kind of teased us with or tempted us with or whatever. But in that version, what is happening with Rania in the basement? Is there any...
Honestly, there was no point of them putting that on there. It was just a little tantrum. She was in timeout, and that was all there was to it. And it was funny how she was acting. And David loved, the thing with David, he documented everything. This may be TMI, but he even recorded her first poop, But that was just him, he loved recording things like in the moment. You'll see a lot of their pictures. They're not posed pictures. They're in the moment pictures. That's what he loved. So it was just something he documented, and they chose to use that, I guess.
Yeah, that seemed kind of strange. Out of all of the stuff that they had,
yeah,
that seemed kind of strange that they would use.
They were just really trying to, prove how David was, and make him look uglier, in my opinion.
Yeah, but they put that, like, it's not just that they showed it in there, it's where they showed it. They showed that in the cult section. So we're here talking about this cult, this and that, and, like, I don't know, like, a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, you just don't get a good feeling after you watch that.
No, because it's just more like fear. It's like, well, it raises so many different things, whereas a documentary is supposed to give you closure. It's supposed to help us understand what really happened here so that we can move on. This did not.
And
this is not a documentary. So,
absolutely not. I completely agree with you, and that was part of the reason why Mr. Alam and Nelson were going back and forth. He said he was going to add some stuff in the end. He was going to, apparently he added the dog at the end. Apparently that was supposed to be a lesson, which I don't see how. It's just crazy to me. Honestly, I don't know how David's family agreed to this. I wish they would have taken back their interviews too, and this wouldn't have happened. But
now, is it possible that they signed the same contract that I signed, and that then they saw it later and they were like, wait a minute, like what the heck is going on here?
When I went with Sidrah to the hotel where they were gonna shoot their interviews, they wanted them to sign it there, and Mr. Alam was not okay with that. He's like, no, I will not sign any paperwork till I see what your agenda is. So yeah, that could very well have been what had happened, but I also do know Sidrah had told me that Dan Sr. had talked to her a little bit about this, and he didn't want to go through with this. Apparently Nelson had reached out to him when all of this had happened, right away, and he shut him down. But I think the Gray State family had a lot to do with why they went through with this. That's just my personal opinion from what I saw. I
totally agree. Mm-hmm.
They pushed it. Honestly, Dan Sr., he's a very sweet man from what I have heard, him talk, the way he's talked to Sidrah. He's a sweet man. Think he got manipulated into doing this. His friends basically, that's what he told Sidrah was, they said this would be a tribute to his son, which I don't see how the heck this is a tribute. But, like you said, maybe he signed it off thinking that would have been a tribute, and afterwards it wasn't what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it was kind of the same thing that they told me. Oh, we just want to get to the truth. We think you guys are great. You guys are on to it. We just want to get your guys' side. And I'm sure, and now what I'm learning is they told everybody else the same thing. We just want to get your view.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
But make sure you sign this document. Like the only reason they wanted me to sign that document was so that I could not sue anybody else, so that I cannot sue it. And it was just like, wait a minute, like. So I even tweaked it, and they didn't really notice it. But it was just like I don't really care because I don't have anything, But it shows that they were not trying to make a documentary. They had ulterior motives, from what I'm saying.
Absolutely. They told everybody, different stories, and I really wish, we everybody got together before all of this.
But they were, but they were keeping us separate. They were trying to make both families think that people that were asking questions were the enemy. Yeah.
It just shows their motives. When Mr. Alam at the end, he told him, there's no way he was gonna sign off on this documentary, and Nelson said he respected his wishes. He would take off. Both Sidrah and Mr. Alam's piece on that, and that was the end of it. And he said he was going to let him know when this aired. He was going to have him fly out to New York and all this stuff. But they honestly, it's pretty crazy. But they didn't even know when it was going to get released. The documentary. I actually told Sidrah because I would regularly check up on y'all's page, and that's where I saw it at. And I told her, I was like, hey, did you know that the documentary is getting released? And she had no idea. And then she told Mr. Alam, and Mr. Alam actually flew out to New York with his lawyer, and he was present at the release, but they had no idea. They were undercover.
Right, which they shouldn't have had to be if all of this was just going to lead us to the truth, right? There was no need for any of that.
Supposedly they went through tons of stuff and went through all of his videos, and I think that's something that Dan Sr. had told Sidrah about. That was part of the reason why he wanted to go through with it, because he wanted someone to come in and dig information, because that's something he has always had trouble with. He always told Sidrah, he can't find the why, so I guess that's part of the reason why he went through with it. Maybe someone would be able to find the why.
Do you know when they? Do you know who interviewed them?
So I don't know names exactly, but Nelson was there. I was there. I was sitting outside when they were getting interviewed. Nelson was there. Mason was there. Chris Peck was there. And there were two other guys that were holding the camera, and there was a skinny guy that was holding the microphone, I believe. Yeah, they wanted to interview both Sidrah and Mr. Alam separately, but Mr. Alam didn't want that. He said that if they wanted an interview, it'd have to be together. So they both sat down together. So on the raw footage, they basically, if they wanted to show Sidrah separately, they just zoomed it in all the way on her to make it seem like she was separate.
So how much footage is there of them? Of the Alams?
They try to get Komel's side of the view on who she was as a person. Sidrah talks about that. They talk about, when they got married. Mr. Alam was opposed that. They talk a lot about, most of it was for Sidrah's side, when she went up there in October. So they touched up on that. Her interaction with David, and just basically he asked stories of Komel and if we knew anything about her paranormal activities and if they had any occurrences. And Sidrah had mentioned one that she had when she went up there in Minnesota when they were living in their apartment. So she brushed up on that part, so that was on the documentary as well. And they ended it showing that she was pregnant and, something good was going to come, which was so stupid, but sorry, I just really hate
weird.
The documentary.
No, I do too. I've only seen it once. And it was the only time that I watched it live. So I do not want to see it. But wait,
yeah, it's a bunch of vomit. Yeah, they actually didn't have the dog part then. They ended it with showing Sidrah's stomach and
Are you
saying,
serious?
okay. Yeah, well, they showed it because, Sidrah's due date was actually Ranya's birthday. So they thought that was so intriguing, so they wanted to end it there by saying, oh, well, this baby's going to come on Ranya's birthday kind of thing,
Oh. Okay, so they're pulling at our heartstrings. Okay.
Yeah, they
Gotcha.
even said that they were going to do it that way because it was just crazy to me. Like, it was just so stupid. Yeah. I'm glad they pulled it out because, gosh.
That seems weird. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. They wanted some kind of emotional thing to end with. That's why they chose the dog. So everybody, he even said it. When Mr. Alam said, take our stuff out, he said, okay, we'll all have to take some stuff out. We'll go ahead and put the dog on there, so we could have that, ending to it. And, everybody can feel happy, giddy, I guess. Gotcha. I don't know how you could feel that way, but.
I guess. All right. Anything else you want to end with here? I really appreciate your time, taking your time.
I mean, just going back to what Sidrah said, I actually truly believe in, what she said. I, in my personal opinion, obviously y'all are, I'm not, who am I to say what y'all should do, but I truly feel like, if you just get out of the, the stories, what happened and who this person was, where the fridge was, just little things. I think if you focus on more of the crime scene, I think that would get you a lot further, cause
well, I mean, okay, well, tell us where we learn that David Crowley is guilty, because that's what I'm having a hard time finding. I can't find anything to really show me. And I've looked at everything. I've looked at,
and that's why I think
Sidrah,
that's why Sidrah actually said to, sit down with investigators. I think y'all should just focus on the facts,
Right.
It doesn't matter why it happened. The facts, how it happened, like who did it,
right.
The actual fact of him actually pulling the trigger, that's the information that y'all should have. And that should be the only thing that should be discussed, in my opinion. So I think that will help a lot. And if y'all want to proceed with that, I can tell Sidrah, that is the route y'all want to go, and we can see if Gummert will be willing to sit down or whoever to answer those questions for y'all.
Sure.
And maybe we can lay it to rest. Who knows?
Let's do it. Sounds good.
It should have been done a long time ago, in all honesty.
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
But I guess better late than never.
Exactly. I just wrote down the exact same thing. Better late than never.
So Sidrah contacted Dan Sr. A couple of days ago, and she asked about Ronnie's ashes, because that is something she has been wanting to do for a long time, to lay them to rest. And life gets in the way. A lot of things happen. That has always been something that she wants to do. So in the past, when she brought it up, Dan Sr. wanted both David and Ronnie to be, together with Komel. In the perfect world, that would have been okay, but, considering the circumstances, that's not something that the Alums were okay with. So they pulled back from that. They didn't talk about it for a good while. But Sidrah contacted Dan Sr. a little while ago, a couple days ago, and asked, if she could get those ashes, and, if he could send them to her, or if she needed to fly out there, she would cover the cost, whatever that was needed to happen, so it could happen. That's something that's been pretty heavy on her conscience, and, she just wants to, proceed with that. So, yeah, he said that was okay, and, he didn't have her address, which was very odd. He definitely has her address. He has sent her a lot of stuff in the mail, documents and stuff in the past, so I guess it got misplaced. Who knows? But yeah, that's what he said. He didn't have her address or whatever, or he would have done it. But yeah, he got her address, and he said he was going to overnight it. So she should actually be getting them tomorrow, which is Friday, and that is a holy day for Muslims. So during sundown, I believe. I'm not sure on the time, but they haven't given me a time yet. But we're shooting for sundown, before sundown. We're going to lay Ronnie to rest right next to Komel. I don't know how they're going to do that, because I know there's other graves there now. So I'm not very familiar with the Muslim, religion. I mean, my mom is Muslim, but I haven't been around that much since I'm Catholic. But yeah, I don't know how they're going to do it, but the ceremony is tomorrow, and me and my husband will be attending it tomorrow, and I'm really happy Ronnie gets to finally be put to rest with Komel the way it should have been done. But yeah, that's all I wanted to share with you guys. So if y'all can pray for Ronnie tomorrow, that would be great. I'll let you guys know when she's put to rest finally, and maybe y'all can say a prayer for her.